Hi guys, I'm Desi and this is Bridging the Realm. Today my guest is Michael Banks. He's a lifelong educator and an independent leadership advisor who coaches executives and their teams while incorporating spiritual values and principles into the business since the 1980s. Michael is also a spoken word live performer and an author of a book called Got a Kidney, which is based on his personal journey of a kidney failure, transplant, and recovery. Most recently, Michael has launched a podcast series called Heroic Journeys from Crisis to Transformations. Michael, thank you so much for being on Bridging the Realm. Welcome.
Thank you very much for that lovely intro, and I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's great to have you. So you have done so much throughout your life. You have, dipped in this and that. You've got such a great experience of across a vast majority of fields and topics. What was the main motivation for you to try out all of these different fields?
Good question. The main motivation started when I was at an English public school, which means private school. It's a boarding school back in the late 60s, which in those days meant that the boarding school was a really brutal environment. And, you weren't with your parents. In fact, for the first term I was there, I was told, which was like 10 weeks or something, they said you can't visit your parents or they can't visit you for 10 weeks in the first term.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Completely bonkers. And the idea was to make sure you were given a backbone. A backbone. I was traumatized, like so many of the kids there. And it was so easy with no sort of family support system to be bullied and teased and all the rest of it. And one day, I was really upset. It was the lunch break. I was in the junior common room. No one was around. I just stood in the middle of the room, and I just said to myself, it doesn't have to be like this. And it doesn't, what I was saying really is it doesn't have to be painful. People do not have to treat each other like this and hurt each other with all this teasing and bullying and so on. So that started me on a journey. That was when I was about 13, maybe 14. A spiritual journey, if you like, really to find my authentic self and to realize myself, self-realization, and to see how I could apply that to the real world and contribute something of value in my life. So that led me into a whole bunch of different experiences all over the place in different areas. And that's my answer to your question.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Wow. That's a pretty young age to start your journey, but it's a really interesting story because it's all about the injustice in the world, isn't it? It's such a good example of the injustice that we experience. Yeah. And this whole kind of like old school mentality of, no, you have to be very strict with everything. And we have to give you a harsh treatment in order for you to get it or to be taught what it's like to be in the world. Yeah. It's just so, it's really not the right way to go, but at least, it made you see this other side of life, isn't it? It was kind of like a catalyst, would you say?
It was a catalyst, and actually, I truly was traumatized by the experience, and I discovered an individual in my mid-20s who became my mentor, and he basically made it clear to me that I had been pushed back inside my head, so to speak, through retreating to protect myself in this environment, and so it took me until I was 25 to completely get out of my head, get out of my self-obsession, which was the result of trying to protect myself back in boarding school years before.
Yeah.
And it was a catalyst for sure. And it kind of, that experience fueled my mission. I mean, my parents didn't know what I was going through. And later on, a few years later, when I was an adult, they told me, I told them, they were mortified, especially my mum. She said, oh my God, we didn't realize you were suffering so much. They would have taken me out. But in fact, it actually helped me to be free of my family, so I could do things like move to America, which I did, when I was 34, or do stuff like experiment with life in a way, without sort of being part of this little nest at home. So,
Yeah.
and also because I had to move through the trauma
Mm.
and liberate myself, it led me to this massive life transformation when I was 25.
Yeah. Oh wow. That sounds pretty like one of those experiences, one of those aha moments that you have in life, and it just makes you see things from a completely different way. So what was this what exactly was this place that you went to, and how did how did you find out about it, and what exactly did it involve?
Well, I was in London at the time, and I just was finishing up after university. I'd fallen in love with a girl who was at the art school in Camberwell, and actually, I was about to go to Thailand to teach 18 to 21-year-old Thai women how to speak English, which
Oh.
for a 22-year-old young English guy was kind of an enticing prospect, to be honest.
Indeed it is.
But then I fell in love, and on the 7/7/77, I decided not to go to Thailand. And I thought, well, it's always going to be there. I can always go there some other time in the future. And so I stayed with my girlfriend in London, and I thought, well, I'd better get a job. So I ended up running an adventure playground in Peckham in southeast London, which at the time was the worst part of the city. It was the highest delinquency rate, the highest child mortality rate, mugging rate, et cetera, et cetera. So I was there for about 3 years, and I was finishing up because I thought, that's enough. It was intense. It was a very stressful job, as you can imagine, with knives and break-ins and God knows what else.
Yeah, definitely.
In those days, they didn't have guns, though. Well, at least the youth didn't. I was dealing with Jamaican youth for the most part.
Yeah.
But they were all pretty criminalized. So anyway, I was sort of wrapping that up, and my sister, who was also at college in London, her closest friend had been on this course called exegesis. And apparently she'd found it very useful and valuable. And so I was curious about it. And I went to what they call a preview in the Hilton Hotel in West London, Kensington. And at the preview, I heard this guy, Robert Daubeny, who's the founder of the exegesis program, talking about the seminar that he ran. And I thought, well, this is all right. My plan was actually to travel through North and South America for a year. So I thought, I might as well do this. It wasn't like I needed help or anything, although I did realize. Sorry?
You were just curious.
I was curious, but I also I was ready for something, I mean, the truth is I did need help, or at least I needed a vehicle to discover and even transform my life, which is what happened. Yeah. So that's how I got into it, and I decided to fork up some money. It wasn't very much money. It was like, at the time, £500 or something. And so I went on this program, and it completely and utterly changed my life. And the effects are still with me today. Oh, wow. Because the course itself, it lasts several days, and it's a journey through how we experience and create reality.
Oh, wow.
So it was a journey to see, to look at one's emotions, feelings, thoughts, belief systems, and so on. Yeah. And the short version of the story is that the end product is that by distancing yourself and observing yourself in life, and observing that you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts and feelings, you have them, but you are you, who you are is not them, and that your body is the vehicle for you, and who you really are is the observer, the consciousness that's observing and experiencing all of this.
Yeah.
And that realization through, it was like magic. It was amazing. I went through these few days. At the end of it, I was absolutely, I remember being completely, well, I won't go into detail because we haven't got time, but I remember my jaw just dropped, and I just sat there with tears coming down my eyes, out of my eyes, and absolutely amazed. What happened then, what the result, the immediate result, is that I had such a release of energy, you would not believe it. Unbelievable. I could see colors more clearly. I was one of these people that had to have 8 hours sleep a night. And
Yeah.
suddenly for the next 3 months, every night, 4 hours was fine
Oh, wow.
because of the level of energy I had.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did when I got home after this course was I had a basement flat in Southeast London. I had a whole bunch of potted plants. And believe it or not, the first thing I did for the first week after this course was look after the plants. I repotted them, I gave them haircuts, I sprayed them, I fertilized them, I did all these things to these plants. And eventually, after a few days, these plants were incredible. Because I got back and I thought, wow, they're dusty, they're half dead. I can't. So what I'm just giving you an example of how my eyes and all my senses were open to life in a way that they hadn't been.
Yeah.
And this release of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And even seeing photographs of myself afterwards, the photographs of myself from my teens through to the age of 25, always my face was tense, clenched. There was anger written all over it. And suddenly there's this young man with this beautiful, clear face, smiling, happy. The whole energy level was high.
Yeah.
All of that anger had gone.
Everything shifts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the most shocking thing about I could talk forever about this experience. It was truly amazing.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it.
Yeah, it's transformational. Truly transformational. There's change and then there's transformation. People use transformation very loosely these days. And mostly it's just really change, which is iterative. But transformation, you could say, is a bit like taking an orange and making it into an apple.
Yeah.
So
completely.
Yeah, and I think the most shocking thing was, before the seminar, they asked me to write down what I wanted, what my goals were.
Yeah.
And what I really wanted was to be like Willie Good Willie. Willie Good Willie was this guy from Scotland with long hair who was in charge of the adventure playground before I took over.
Oh, okay.
And Willie had no qualifications whatsoever, absolutely working class, nothing academic, but he was so perceptive and bright. His ability to read people was incredible. And there was I straight out of university. And I thought, I was jealous. I thought, oh, if only I could be so perceptive. And that's what I went into the executives program wanting to gain from it.
Yeah.
Well, I got that. And that's another story as to how that happened and how it is today. But the main thing was when I was sitting there on the end of the seminar, and the person who was leading it, a lady called Kim Coe, said to me, Michael, what you have gained from this that was missing in your life is love. And I went, oh, of course. It's not occurred to me. But that's exactly what it was. And if you connect that to what I was saying a few minutes ago about how, I'd been traumatized. I'd literally been cut off from my feelings from this horrific experience at boarding school. I didn't know what a feeling was from a hole in the wall.
It's almost like you numbed yourself out from feeling anything. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was the beginning of my ability to give and receive love. But it was a quantum leap in that.
Yeah, totally. No, that sounds like such a transformational experience. Really, really. Yeah, and definitely just the catalyst for everything you've done since then, isn't it? Like a huge catalyst. What do you think would have happened if you never went to this event? Do you think you would have somehow fallen into this spiritual stuff as well, or?
Yeah, I think something would have happened because it wasn't just what happened in that when I was standing in that junior common room when I was 13 or 14. I then got converted to Church of England. I can never remember the name of it. I had this special ceremony where they not baptize you. It's sort of the Church of England equivalent. Because I found God lying in my dormitory bed one night and asking the question, is there a God? and getting the yes back 3 times. 3 times asked it, 3 times yes. So that was another thing. And then when I went to university, my two best friends were two Indian brothers.
Yeah.
And they and their father were devotees of Sri Aurobindo, who you may have heard of. He founded in Pondicherry in India this amazing international city, and his writings are incredible. So that was not the only thing.
So there were loads of other things, but that seems like it was the main kind of catalyst, wasn't it?
Yes, I mean, I think that was everything you need to know about how to transform your life, all wrapped up in a few days. Of course, that's just the beginning.
Yeah,
it's not like suddenly, oh yeah, I'm enlightened and
everything's
gonna be fine. In fact, that's just the beginning of
the
all the
journey.
various steps. Yeah, the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, at what point was it that you wanted to start integrating spirituality into the business? Because you began doing that a little later on. How did that come about?
Yeah, that was interesting because Robert, the guy I mentioned, who was the founder of this whole thing, essentially my mentor in a way, I was actually training, which I was very excited about because it was only me and one other guy at the time. We were training to lead these seminars, these executive seminars, and do what he did, definitely. So we had this little office in Holborn in the city in London, and one lunch he took me for a walk around the city, and we had lunch together, and he shared with me his vision of setting up a group of companies in the business world that would be a vehicle for demonstrating how amazing communication skills could transform business, and how spiritual principles and values, the kinds of things that people had gone through in the executive seminar, could be actually applied to the business world. And so we wanted to demonstrate what was possible, and in the process be part of leading the transformation of society.
Wow.
It's just a small goal.
just a tiny one.
But it was a very exciting vision for the people like myself and others who'd been through this course, who were attracted to that possibility. And actually, so we ended up with 9 companies. We did very well. Our first company actually was, boringly enough, telephone marketing. But this in 1984, we were told not to enter the British Direct Marketing Association Awards the year after because we got first and second and third places. And we literally transformed the use of the phone in Europe and how it was used to market business to business, to sell.
Oh, wow.
We were amazing. I mean, we were well known in the public, the newspapers, BBC, all kinds of stuff. At the same time, what that came with was a lot of controversy. A lot of people saying, you're a brainwash cult and all that kind of stuff. Really? And of course, there I was going on the inside going, oh, come on, give me a break. I mean, talk about knowing, and in fact, the BBC did a documentary on us once, and they lied. They set us up. And of course, the power of the media is you can portray things in a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like a brainwashing cult. And of course, they did that. My parents got to know the organization. They had a tour around. They met my friends. And after their initial horror that I'd done this thing, this cult, especially my dad's like, wow, this is fantastic. Good for you, Michael. And I became the son he always wanted. That was a great irony of it because of what I'd learned and how I'd become as a person.
Yeah, how you integrated it all.
Yeah.
Wow. So what were some of the things, so what did they base that on, the criticisms that you were getting? What did they base it on?
Oh, they based it on the fact that you think about it, in 1981 in London, in business, and we had actually transformed a huge furniture warehouse in northwest London. We had ourselves, the people in the organization, had actually done the carpentry to make all the phone tables. We'd done all the plumbing, the wiring, the carpeting, the painting. We put up beautiful plants, flowers every day, fresh. it was a gorgeous environment.
Yeah.
And in that, we had 70 people on the phones doing telephone marketing. We had
Yeah.
loads of other people and so on. And people, managing directors would come in from all over Britain to have appointments with us. We wouldn't go and see them to sell ourselves.
Oh wow, they will come
They
to,
would come to us because they'd heard about us and
yeah.
how amazing it was. And they'd go in, then they'd come out at the end of their meetings, and their mouths would be open like, wow, what was that? That was incredible. But a lot of it was about, oh, what are you doing to these people? They're too happy.
It's too good to be true.
Too good to be true. England, 1981. I mean, so how grey and boring is that?
Yeah.
And so
The dog is hungry.
So yeah, I mean, basically, I would say to people that, you know, why are they like that? Well, we inject green serum into them, so they're totally brainwashed. No, I'd say things like, well, they're happy because they enjoy their work.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? They actually enjoy their work and they enjoy working with each other.
Yeah.
You know, so we had this incredible buzz, and that's why it's so exciting working there. But it took, you know, there's certain things had to be in place. There were people who were there because they wanted to learn, because they wanted to become experts in how to communicate authentically with people.
Yeah.
That's why we were so good on the phone. We had authentic conversations with people, not sales.
Yeah, just trying to sell. Yeah, because you can feel it, isn't it? You can so tell when someone's calling you just to sell you something, and if they're genuinely, you know, interested, they believe in the product that they sell you. It's a completely different vibe. You can tell from the person's tone, from the energy that they're giving, you know, everything, the way in which they speak about the product. It's a completely different vibe that you get from one to the other.
Well, it definitely was. And I mean, this is also fascinating because the emphasis was on not the result. The emphasis was on having a satisfying conversation, both as the phoner, the telephone marketer, and the person on the other end of the call.
Yeah.
The emphasis was on the relationship, and and then a result would come out of that, or not. But either way, you could put the phone down and say, "I'm happy with that call.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it." And then, in addition to that, the training was, you know, you had to be on the phones for 3.5 hours in the morning from 9 to 12:30.
Yeah.
And from 1:30 to 5. That's 7 hours on the phone all the time. Pick up the phone. And so initially, when you started this, your time on the phones, and everyone had to go through this if they joined the organization, everyone, including we had the CEO of a global multinational company. He had to start on the telephones.
Yeah.
And then 3 months later,
somewhere.
yeah. Well, no, because it was a training. Because what happened, and in my experience, people would get very angry because they weren't getting results. You had to check off each call, including no answers, busy signal, everything.
So you're trying to show like an example of the CEO doing it and what's the correct way of doing it?
Not really. It's just that you had your own script. You had a project you were doing the telephone marketing on. You had a little call sheet where you marked all the different categories of the call, like call back, no answer, busy signal, engaged, I think they call it in the UK, sale or appointment, or because it was mainly about setting appointments for, you know, computer companies and things like that. But anyway, the point I want to make is that initially people were trying to get results, so that distorted their authenticity and made them salesy, inauthentic. And so the great training was when the person who was angry or upset, for example, they'd start crying. Good, get on the phone, pick up the phone again. Yeah. It sounds like totally awful. It was brilliant because they'd pick up the phone. Oh, I can't do this anymore. Oh, I hate this. Good, pick up the phone and make a call. And then make a call and suddenly, oh my God, I got an appointment. And then another one, and then another one. And what that was about, excuse me, was letting go of trying to impress, trying to sell, trying to do it, but simply having a real conversation. And can you imagine how that affects the human being? How they become so much more real in their interactions in life with people
Yeah.
when they're not trying to impress or control or manipulate. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
because it's like, yeah, it's like you're removing that factor that's making them anxious and getting the results, isn't it? So they can focus on the actual important stuff, which is, like you said, the conversation with the actual person and that
Exactly.
humanity level that you get and the connection that you get with speaking to someone.
Exactly. And it's actually then more about, it's actually totally about the person you're speaking to and not about yourself. Because when it's about yourself, it's like, am I doing this right? Am I getting wrong? Will my manager be happy with me? Will they be upset with me if I don't get a result here? Rather than, no, my focus is on the person I'm speaking to.
Yeah,
That's a human being there,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
Get out of yourself.
Mm.
Get out of your self-preoccupation, because that's part of the problem, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, that's a bigger topic, but that's why authenticity is so much about getting out of your own head.
Yeah.
Getting out of your own self-absorption. And
Mm.
most people spend a lot of their time worried about what other people think of them, and we need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
It's important to know how we're impacting others and to care in that sense, but basically, don't be concerned about what people think of you. Be yourself,
Yeah.
as long as you're respectful, and if you're upset, you don't take it out on people or whatever, but it's still, be yourself.
Mm. Yeah, that's such a good advice, and I couldn't agree more. I remember when I used to work in telesales, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and because it's exactly what you were saying. They were trying to get us results. Come on, guys, come on. I need 2, appointments, 3 appointments. Come on, and they'll make us go into competition with one another. Okay, this person has a star. He's got 5 appointments, and it's just like, that's not what this is about. And you speak to, and most of the time the people who actually wanted to speak to you were these, bless them, like these old people who had really no clue what we were talking about, and we were trying to sell them this stuff. And I remember, I think it was kitchenware or something, and you can tell that they really didn't care about their kitchen, and we were there trying to sell them, no, but and trying to list all these words that we've been given and phrases. Oh, but don't you think you should change your kitchen? Wouldn't you feel great if you had a new kitchen? So it's this whole thing of trying to literally manipulate a person into agreeing to getting an appointment and potentially buying a new kitchen, which they really don't need. And oh god, it's just this whole thing, it's so wrong. It's so, I was literally there for a week, and I had to leave because I just couldn't. I mean, good for people who can actually stay on these jobs, and if they love them, then great. But yeah, if your heart's not in it, then definitely it's not a great one to be in.
It's
Yeah.
not rewarding, is it? I mean, we used to sell and market everything under the sun: Learjets, table tennis, golf balls. Once and sublime to the ridiculous. But the whole point was, it doesn't matter what the product or service is. What matters is the quality of the conversation, so that both parties feel good about it. And if there's genuine need or interest, fine, make a sale, set an appointment.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
there isn't, fine. And of course, fine, I understand you don't want to do, no problem at all. That's it.
Yeah, totally. And so so to go back to the story of all the criticism, okay, so the BBC did this documentary. So how did that affect your business? Did that affect it at all? And how did it?
No, actually, I think in a way it was probably quite good, because the people who were responsible for, setting appointments with companies that might be interested in using our services,
Yeah.
they would call up and say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you come down, if you come down if you can make it here by 9 a.m, you can come and see the countdown. And they probably heard about the countdown. Some of them would say, oh yeah, I've heard about the countdown. The countdown is it started when there's just 10 of us in a little tiny basement office in the city. And we were so poor, we used to go to the church opposite for a soup meal, like soup kitchen type thing.
Yeah.
And Steve Budd, who's now a mega music mogul in Europe, he was one of my friends and colleagues, and he came back one day from the soup kitchen, and you know, I told you, like 2 o'clock to 5:30 or whatever it was, 1:30 to 5.
To do
It's
the
like, oh God. He said, look, guys, let's why don't we just have a countdown so we can get off it and just be in the moment and start without thinking about how horrible this is going to be for 3.5 hours. He went, okay, let's do it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pick up the phones, you know, and then after the count, you all pick up the phone at the same time and get into it.
Yeah.
And then one day I actually added something. I said, okay, so how about we do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, shit! Because like, oh, no! And that stuck as well. But then fast forward to being in this big furniture warehouse, and at 9 and 2 in every day, people would come from the offices all over the complex of buildings, all our different companies, all the different staff. So we might have about, 200 people in the room.
Mm.
And one of the phone managers, Melvin or someone, would say, okay, everybody, shall we have a countdown? And now, yay! It was fantastic. And these people, these very top business people, like heads of companies, would be there for that. And they'd go, oh. And we'd be across the table sort of selling them our services and whatever they were. And they'd say, okay, so this is the countdown now, because people would gather, they'd come in the room. And so they'd start to sing a song.
Oh, wow.
And so using the words to things like, one of the classics was Frank Sinatra's My Way. I did it my way. But we used telephone marketing words as the words for the tune.
Okay,
And so after all these men and women had been singing this incredible, like the Welsh, choir, they would then go into the countdown. And can you imagine all those people going 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and everyone's sort of pumping the air with their arms. Oh shit! And then in the later days, we even had musical instruments and everything. I mean, this has got insane.
Oh, wow. This sounds like a concert.
Oh, it was so much fun. And of course, these people, they go, whoa, can we have a bit of this in our company? This was so radical, but so much fun.
Yeah. Wow. So you literally introduced them to just this completely new way of working, isn't it? Where you're incorporating your heart in it, and it's really kind of, like you said, authentic, and you're actually allowing your human side to come out. No, it's not just this robot that's trying to sell. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
and I can imagine in the 1980s, that was a huge thing as well. Because I mean, I can just imagine all the companies, they pretty much did everything in the same way. You know, this was the correct way to do it. This is how you do it. And that's it. You just stick to that norm.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I mean, from all the controversy that occurred, and all of those elements in society, you know, media, private eye, and all that were critical of this, within 2 or 3 years, we had so many people, so many companies copying us. And now, of course, it's like it has for years mainstream. These activities are mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but that's what you get when you're pioneers.
Yeah.
You're going to have to expect a lot of opposition.
No, totally. Yeah. But wow, it's amazing what you've created, and the fact that so many people followed after you, that's really incredible. And it makes such a difference. I mean, I've worked in jobs where, the companies really couldn't give a shit about you. and I've worked in companies where they want you to succeed. They want you to do better, and they get you to do all of these extra courses so you can work on yourself and you can improve. And it really does make a difference, because you actually feel like someone's also investing in you, and they believe in you. So you want to give more back to them. So it's kind of like the cycle of, giving and receiving. But when you're working...
Absolutely. And I think also what matters as well, it was a great example of when a company or an organization has a higher purpose and a compelling vision that enrolls people genuinely in that vision, in that higher purpose, with huge meaning. I mean, we had, it was a journey, it was an adventure, but it was one that was leading to, truly, I mean, I still believe in it, that the idea of the transformation of society. And in fact, I think I wrote down one of my things, like, the question, how do we transform the level of consciousness of the human species
Yeah.
to move on to a higher level. And that's what that was about for
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
And it's still about for me and many others. And hopefully, around the world, more and more people, especially younger people, have that sense that it is possible to transform how things are. We
Mm.
are actually miles away from it, but actually very close to doing that.
Yeah, I think anything that, especially with companies and anything to do with the corporate business, I think for me personally, it's so important that people are beginning to incorporate the spiritual stuff more and more, because otherwise you just feel like a robot, and it makes your life miserable for
Yes.
everyone. So it's so important. That's like, I honestly think that's a huge, a huge topic of, that we need to integrate. And it's amazing what you've done. Really, really brilliant. Wow. Yeah, you should
Thank
definitely
you.
be like proud of that. It's amazing.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, yeah, so moving on to the next stage of
Yes.
your life.
Yes.
From there.
Which one?
So you, after this whole period, you moved to the US. And what was that like? Well, first of all, what made you move to the US? What was the main reason behind it?
The main reason was that I just had a gut instinct that that was going to be my real home.
Mm.
Simple as that. I just felt that it was my destiny, that I would only be really happy, truly happy, when I lived in America.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
think one of the one of the things about being going to boarding school that I told you about earlier is that I didn't feel particularly attached to family,
Yeah.
which is not a great thing. I mean, but or to England. Actually, I was never, even it's nothing to do with boarding school. I was never really attached to England.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Mm.
Uh, I'm not attached to any country. I don't feel attached to any. So I never felt homesick leaving England.
Mm.
It's probably also because I was so excited to to be there. And it's only in recent times that, for various reasons, I've been happy not to be there.
Mm.
But for many years, that was my home. I'm a kind of hybrid, really.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No,
so
I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
mm, yeah. So I went there, and I went with with two phone numbers, um, with names attached, obviously. And it turned out that one of the names, a lady called Pat Meyer, she had a PR company in San Francisco and a big house in Mill Valley, and she said, "I've got a self-contained apartment at the back of the house. So why don't you stay here for the first year? So you got a soft landing." And the other person was Ben Greenspan, who was a lawyer who helped me with my immigration papers. So
Okay.
it's perfect. Those two people between them, rest is history.
That's
And
all you
and
needed.
yeah. And I had some money. I actually went over to be an actor.
Oh,
I
really?
went. Yeah, I was taking acting classes with Robert De Niro's acting teacher,
Oh, wow.
and I had meetings. George Lucas's casting director, Anne Brebner, had meetings with her. She told me, "Oh, you should definitely be doing this. You have the talent to be a movie star, and
Yeah.
you should do it." And blah 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 blah. And go to Hollywood. And so I mean, and she wasn't bullshitting. She was like 70 years old. She did all the Star Wars
She knew her
casting.
stuff. Yeah. Mm.
So that's where I went to do it. And then of course the money ran out because I'd sold my apartment in London.
Yeah.
And then I thought, wait a minute, am I going to do the proverbial wait tables and go for auditions the rest of my life? Or do I go back to my vocation?
Mm.
And it was another one of several times in my life where I've tried to stray from my calling, my
Yeah.
vocation, which is in education.
Yeah.
So I ended up thinking, okay, I'm gonna bite the bullet and get back into education. And I just started, and I ended up doing a bunch of stuff for American Express,
Mm.
and that's went from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. But you had a pretty successful business while you were there, right? You kind of got into the corporate ladder and managed to get yourself into the business. And so how was that different to you know, doing everything in the UK? Was it different? Did you find a big sort of
Yeah, I mean, it was, well, first of all, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but, you know, in America, everything's possible. In England, you know, you say, this is what I'd like to achieve in my life. Oh, come on, you've got to be kidding. You can't do that. You know, the sort of, the Brits tend to pour, well, at least they used to. I'm not sure they do anymore so much. They used to pour cold water over anyone's positive aspirations.
Oh yeah, we still do that, don't we? It's like
Yeah, I don't know. I've only been back for 2 years. I haven't really sort of noticed that. I think it's actually better than it used to be. But young people seem to be far more open to and accepting of it's okay to be positive and have a positive vision for your future and
yeah,
believe you can achieve things. Anyway, that was very different because in America it's like within this lady Pat Meyer, within a month or two of being there, I was on 4 different radio stations as
oh
a
wow.
guest and on TV. I was on breakfast time TV.
Within
They
four
wheeled
months. Wow.
within because that was America, you
Mm,
know. And you know, I mean, my original intention was to go over, was always my mission was to use the media to get to my messages across to a large number of people.
yeah.
And so I went over there. I was like, okay, I'm going to be on radio and TV. And sure enough, Pat was able to do that for me. She got me all these things.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a radio show called New Horizons in Business. And
Mm,
you can probably see that, you know, that was a long time ago. But why now I'm podcasting.
yeah. Yeah,
You know,
totally. No, it's all connected, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
Were you still trying to sort of incorporate the whole spiritual aspect of it, you know, teaching, doing educational stuff and incorporating this kind of trying to make a positive difference in the company corporate world?
Yeah. Well, what happened is I was independent.
Mm,
And then in 1996, I'd been to an event called the State of the World Forum, which
yeah.
is incredible. Which is a week-long meeting of world leaders and celebrities and people like me, who was a nobody, so to speak, uh, in one sense. And I'd met, I'd invited a lady who was also working with a client of mine at American Express, who was one of the presidents there. And so Catherine invited me to join her company, KRW International, in '96, and that was so I actually joined another company, and it was Catherine and Fred and me. They were the 2 founders, and we had a community in a way. It was a bit like what we had in London, different, but
Yeah.
it was a community that was based on incredible values. The
Mm,
headquarters was in Minnesota and Minneapolis. We had a corporate apartment in New York and a beautiful, amazing bunch of people. And we'd have like every year, we'd have a couple of days where everyone, wherever they were, would come in and spend time together. We'd do all kinds of things that were culturally enriching. And we just had, it was a very special organization. And so,
mm,
yes, that was definitely about this, you know, in a sense, applying spiritual principles to the business. We were number 1 in America. I can say that
wow.
without fear of contradiction in our field, executive coaching.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the work I was doing with executives, in those days you didn't get you didn't have the expression life coach, and
Mm.
even now I'm not a life coach as such. I'm a business executive coach when I do it.
But they're still kind of similar, aren't they? Because you integrate a lot of the same stuff
Exactly.
in
And
it.
what we were doing at that time was really deep coaching. Like I would coach an exec for 12 to 18 months.
Mm.
There would be like 7 psychometric assessments.
Oh wow.
I would interview, say, 25 colleagues and family, like parents,
Yeah.
best friends. And I would take them away for 2 days
Oh
and
wow.
go through all of this verbatim data. I mean, talk about that was just
That's
very,
a lot.
very spiritual in the sense of, you know, this changed people's lives. I mean, this was like a crystal clear reflection for the individual of how they impacted the world. And that's very profound.
Definitely. Yeah. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you saw people face normally in those types of positions? People who work in a big corporate company, for example, and what
Good
were the big
question.
things that were kind of stopping them from progressing or being their best, the best potential they could be?
Very good question. Some of the biggest things were the fact that certainly in those days, probably even now as much, people were promoted for being particularly skillful in a certain area, like skillful in technology, skillful in science, skillful in finance or whatever. That doesn't mean to say they were intelligent human beings. I mean, yes, they were intelligent in the sense they knew how to do certain things that they'd learned, and they were naturally good at those. But did it make them all-rounded, wise human beings who knew how to treat people well, build relationships, motivate, inspire? Not necessarily. So a big impediment was the fact that a lot of these people were kind of distorted and they got to the top. So they were mega successful. And their relationship with their own ego was really poor.
Oh.
And so they have these blind spots. And it made me think, and it still does to this day, how do people like that get to be promoted to positions like that? Because someone like me would come in and slap them around the face, metaphorically speaking, and say, listen, wake up. Do you realize how you're a useless leader of people? Here's the evidence. This is what people think about you. This is how they feel around you. You happy with that? Is that your choice? Or do you realize, you know that people don't trust you? You know that you come across as a bully? All these things.
Wow.
And that was revelatory because of the type of feedback I gave, which was literally taking down every word that everyone said and not editing and not summarizing and not just putting it into statistics and numbers.
Yeah.
And so that was very, very powerful. So that's one of the things where people don't have a rounded education in self-realization, self-awareness. Because in the end of the day, if you could ask me if there's one phrase that described what I was able to help these people with, was to have an increased level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And that was the major impediment, the lack of self-awareness.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
It's a spiritual thing, as well. I mean,
Totally. It's a huge realization. So what was their reaction, when you were telling them? Because these are pretty hurtful things, to hear what your employees think of you. How did they react to that?
Anger, remorse, grief, sadness, shock. They couldn't be defensive because that was the evidence I was presenting them.
Yeah.
And because I'm a strong guy too, in terms of, I'm not, I just treat them like I would anyone else.
Yeah.
So if they say, well, no, that's not me, that's wrong. And I would say, well, it's not. It's the truth of how people experience you. It's not up for debate. It's what is.
Yeah.
And so it was so powerful that, but nevertheless, it didn't stop them feeling very emotional and upset. Mainly emotional and upset because they realized, oh my God, I didn't realize that people, that I affected people like that. And I've got so many stories of, people who literally sort of had a transformational experience when they realized this and how it changed their life, changed their behavior, how they related to people, how they led their organizations. Incredible.
Wow, that's really, truly amazing. Yeah, because if anyone is to lead you and to lead a whole company with, say, anything between 5 to 1,000 people, you want to be able to trust that person. You want to be able to trust that they have good values, values that incorporate positivity and kind of the human spirit. So it's not just about work and getting the money, but it's also about caring how people actually feel. So that's who I want to work for. I don't want to work for someone who's just only cares about the profits. Definitely not. Well, so have you seen you must have seen the huge transformation that happened in them during that time of trying to integrate and face their own shadows and there was some.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's interesting because I've not really. I mean, those were the back in the day. That's the kind of process we use. That very long, very in depth, very holistic approach to coaching.
Yeah.
Um, but in recent times, I suppose in the last sort of 10 or 15 years, it's much more about, oh, you've only got like, you can go away for half a day, not 2 days. You
Mm.
can only interview
Yeah.
people. The coaching program is only going to be 6 months.
Mm.
Da, 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 da. And there's all these constraints now because, of the nature of the business environment.
Yeah,
And
totally.
society as well, which is like quick, 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 not enough time, sound bites, blah blah,
Yeah.
um, all that stuff. So so yeah, it's different now. But I
Mm.
don't do much. I mean, I haven't done much work really in the last few years because of my health problems and
Yeah.
um, because I also actually gave up. I did try 2 startups 10 years ago.
Oh yeah.
I thought, well, I've done everything. I've achieved my goals in life around, coaching corporate leaders and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I had a great life. I traveled, worked around the world.
Yeah. You wanted to move on to
Very, very
something different.
successful. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, tell me a bit about that, because you've had quite a few huge transformations in your life, and the most recent one was perhaps the one where your kidneys failed and you had to have a transplant. Tell me a bit about this whole journey, because and you've written an amazing book about it called "Got a Kidney," which is so touching and just so eye-opening, and for anyone who goes through that, because it's definitely something that's not really talked about a lot, I think, and a lot of people go through it. So it's so beautiful that you've written this book that other
Thank
people
you.
can relate to. Yeah, it's really
Thank
amazing.
you very much. The statistics in the UK alone, there's over 3 million people with kidney disease.
Wow, three
Can you
million.
believe that? 3 million. In the States, it's over 30 million.
Oh wow.
So it's a huge issue. But thank you for saying that, because that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted to share my story. I felt I had to. It's like, I got to, and hopefully inspire people.
Mm.
I'll My book ended up in Bhutan, the Kingdom of Bhutan.
Oh yeah, because
And my dear friend Ian, who channels White Bull, who lives in Holland, I've known him for 40 years, and he's an amazing guy, and he's friends with the royal family of Bhutan, has been for, and his family for years before it was opened up to the West,
yeah.
before ever went there. And he was over there recently, a year or two ago, and there's this lovely young guy called um, Tashi, who is the head of the Bhutan Kidney Foundation,
Oh
and who himself was a kidney, went through kidney transplant.
yeah.
Anyway, so I got this lovely picture of Ian and Tashi together, smiling in Bhutan, with Tashi got the cover of my book there. So
Oh
suddenly I'm getting all these Facebook, because Tashi's a highly respected guy in Bhutan. I
yeah.
get all these young men and women asking me to be friends on Facebook who are Bhutanese.
Yeah.
Uh, and one guy who was waiting for the transplant, young guy, he wrote me back and said, "Thank you so much for the book,"
Oh,
because he shared it around. It really has helped and inspired me and given me some courage. So I thought, well, even if I wrote it just for that one guy, it's worth it.
yeah. Oh wow, that's so incredible. And yeah, and definitely more than one person, isn't it? I mean, all these people who are suffering with that can hugely contribute from someone else's experience of it, because especially if it's something that you've never experienced in your life before, it definitely helps to have something
Yeah,
to compare against, isn't it?
exactly. It's very, very scary when
Mm,
you get first diagnosed with kidney disease, but
yeah.
then even more scary if your kidneys fail and you think, what's my life going to become? Am I going to have a life? And just the unknown as well. And so, yeah, to have a book that tells the story of someone who had all of that, but
Mm,
came through and
yeah.
came out in many ways better and happier than he was before, is very encouraging. And you like to read that. So yeah, so that's
No, that's
unfortunately sold many copies. It was self-published, and I couldn't get it into retail outlets because it was
yeah.
self-published.
Oh, yeah, it's always difficult with these things, isn't it? But yeah, but the fact that people are emailing you and contacting you and saying that it's helping them and it's changing their life, that's huge, and that's all you need, really. And again, with anything like this, I guess it's just marketing and exposure and trying to get it
It's all about marketing. You know,
marketing.
I'm still thinking of actually getting a proper publisher to publish it,
Yeah, yeah.
republish it, but through and I'm also thinking of, maybe I should do an audible version of it,
Oh, yeah, definitely for
or
people.
even a movie,
Mm. Oh,
because
yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah.
There's so much else going on, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? The doors will open for you. You want when it's meant to happen, it will happen. That's kind of what I believe in. You just send it out into the universe, and it'll come back somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how? So what was it like? Kind of, experiencing that. And I guess because you have to pretty much face your mortality at that point, isn't it? And there's this question of what's going to happen. Am I going to die? And am I going to live? What did you? What was going through your mind at the time?
Oh gosh. It's it's almost like it's when you're in the middle of it. When I was in the middle of it, it's almost it's unreal.
Mm,
You're just going with it. Like going with the fact that I was sleeping for 48 hours virtually non-stop before Karen took me to the doctors. And
mm,
then I was told you can't go home to pick up your toothpaste. You're going now to the hospital. And
wow.
then being in the emergency room, um, suddenly falling apart, crying my eyes out, realizing, God, I'm in trouble. And
Mm,
the fear of all that, and then having 20 or so doctors and nurses and cardiologists and kidney people right there. I thought it seemed like they took me from the reception area to a room next door. They
mm,
probably did, I don't know. It was unreal. And then to wake up to be told your kidneys have failed,
yeah.
you almost died because your heart was being damaged because of the fluid that had accumulated, and
Oh,
then we're going to put you on dialysis to keep you alive, and then like, well, I suppose it's just unreal,
mm,
weird. I think when it really um, when it really hit me was just when I was interacting with other people, of course, Karen. I
mm,
mean, I could be there on my own and sort of drugged up and sort of with tubes coming out of me and all the rest of it.
mm,
And I write about it in the book. Like
yeah.
this large lady comes into the room with a massive machine. And like, what the hell? And I mean, it's this huge machine, and she sort of hooks me up, and my blood starts sort of flowing through this tube, and
Yeah. Oh
then
God.
Karen, yeah. So it's hard to describe. There was no overriding feeling or thought. I suppose beneath it all, it was the same kind of unreality that I had when I was 32, when I also was a medical miracle, and there I was on my way to death. And but what kept me going and why? Well, after they had a conference when I was 32 of doctors from all over the UK to figure out why I was still alive,
Oh,
and they couldn't reach consensus. But
okay.
what they discovered when they opened me up on a Sunday, because I was going to be dead by the end of the day if they didn't, what they discovered is that my appendix had grown into the stomach wall, formed an abscess, and it had all exploded weeks and weeks before.
Oh God.
So I should have been dead within 2 or 3 days of the explosion. It wasn't just my appendix exploding, it was this abscess as well.
Yeah.
And so my physical strength and well-being, plus more than that, my desire to live, was so strong that it kept me going all the
Mm,
way to the point where they operated. And 2 days before the operation, my friend Joe Pritchard, who is a typical Yorkshireman, You know, for the north of England, they're very blunt, they're very direct, typically.
Yeah.
Everyone else was coming into the room, and I was there in the isolation room, or well, they could come in, but they would bring flowers. They'd be very quiet, and they're sort of tentative and well-meaning, of course. Joe just came up to me. He'd been through this exegesis program. That helped.
Yeah.
So he knew what to do. And he came up to me, he shouted at me in my face. And he asked me the question, do you want to die? Are you going to die? Right? And it was brilliant because I went, no, I'm not. I literally, the power of making a decision, the power of choice, incredible. I truly believe that was the point at which I made a decision that was so deep and profound and complete to stay alive that kept me going.
Wow.
And I think it was the same thing with the kidney episode. Well, episode, it's more than an episode.
The whole phase of your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can definitely see that you've had, I mean, clearly you have a mission, you know, let's just say it. You have a mission, you have a reason to be here. So I really love how you've used everything that has happened throughout your life, whether good or bad, every type of experience, and you've managed to kind of just transform it into this thing that you can offer to the world, and they can learn from and have this wisdom, this amazing wisdom that has come from you and your own experience. It's really remarkable how you do that, and you've done that throughout your whole life, and you've managed to somehow incorporate all of your key values that have, you know, you began with from the very beginning of your journey until today, and you've managed to incorporate all of these values and somehow integrate all of those experiences and just turn them into something that's so inspiring. That's really, really incredible. Yeah, really amazing.
Thank you for seeing that. It's true. But I was thinking as you were saying that, and I really appreciate what you said, very kind words.
Oh.
And true. I think, but I was thinking that, you know, in order to have got to where I've got to now, with actually more to offer than I've ever had in my life, and more energy, more excited because I've got so much to offer because I've learned so much.
Exactly.
But I was thinking that on the way to where I am now, I've definitely sort of been on the edge.
Yeah, no, of course.
Sometimes consciously, but put myself into situations where, because the thing is, I've said this to someone the other day, you know, it's true. When you decide consciously to be on a journey of realizing your potential of self-realization, then inevitably you're not going to have a quiet life typically. You know, you're going to get all sorts of things coming at you that will test you and allow you to gain wisdom.
Totally, yeah.
However, in the process, it's going to be difficult. So when I was 32 and that thing I just told you about, when I had the kidney thing, there were other things. The house burned down. I lost all my money, completely. I lost the company, lost the marriage, lost the money. And that's a whole other thing we haven't even touched on. I mean, and that was about me rediscovering, in fact, discovering truly for the first time, the value of relationships, community, and friends, versus being on a treadmill with money and profit and prestige being the end goal. That happened in 2002 because it all happened at the same time. Yeah. And, you know, the financial meltdown. But interestingly, I was so happy after I'd left my marriage and after I went totally broke. I was quite wealthy, you know.
Yeah, I think you described it as you replaced the two-dimensional life with freedom. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's where then I started to give myself some other tests. You know, I had a crazy time. I was, you know, I had a sort of, I went for a few years completely enjoying myself. I mean, you know, party time, all kinds of interesting stuff.
Why not? Yeah, you deserved it, working your whole life, and yeah, why not? I mean, I truly believe that, you know, life is just an experience, whether it's a good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's all about kind of growing and experiencing as much as we possibly can, and just trying to somehow integrate what we've gained from these experiences into our own reality and somehow offer it to the world if it helps.
Absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Desi, because I think I also think that to get out of these tricky situations or periods in your life, having a purpose, having a mission, and then contributing to others, learning to be generous when your first inclination is to protect yourself. Okay, so I've lost all my money, I'm totally broke, but can you find it in yourself to give someone $1, when they need it, despite being broke? Or if you're really depressed and upset, can you find it, and all you can think about is your own problems, can you find it in yourself to give something to some other person by way of a conversation or some advice, right? Get out of yourself, and exactly. So that the meaning in life, I believe, comes from knowing that you're part of a greater whole, and that you're contributing to that, to the other, not the self. And so that's been my sort of guiding principle, and I think that's what's really helped me, and I think that's what I'm enjoying life now, is because I'm a lot more fulfilled in that respect. I'm more authentic than I've ever been. I'm now living my values better than I ever have. So it's great. And I've got another project. I want another book.
Oh, amazing. What are you writing about now?
The title will probably be, the working title is, Josh, this is what I've learned. Okay. And Josh is my hairdresser.
Oh, really? Oh, is it like a sharing story kind of?
Well, here's the thing. No, he's real. I mean, Josh is 28. He's got his own salon in Norwich. He's a great guy. And then a few weeks ago, he said to me, Michael, because we get chatting as you do when you cut hair. He said, look, you've been through all these things. What advice would you give me, someone like me? I've just started my own business. I'm 28 years old. I really want to learn. What advice would you give to me? And so I thought, I'll write some stuff down and email it to you, Josh. I thought, I'm honored. I'd be honored to. Oh. And as time has gone by, I haven't sent him anything yet. But what's percolating is a book that I will really enjoy writing. And that will be a book that is like me passing on what I've learned to a man who's 28 years old. To learn, who I love. It's a really great guy, giving me so much pleasure. But it's really, Josh is like younger people. So Josh, this is what I've learned. This is an older man talking to not just men, but younger men and women.
Just passing on your wisdom, basically. Yeah.
Maybe different topics. Like, for example, I thought, one topic could be commitment. I mean, what is commitment? People talk about commitment. They use the word a lot. But what is it? What does it mean to be really committed, truly committed? And actually, the reality of it, in my book anyway, is that it's a real challenge to be truly committed to a relationship or to a purpose in life, because more and more we get distracted. More and more, it's easy for people to just let go of a commitment. Doesn't mean that much. Of course, the classic one is relationships. I'll just go find another boyfriend.
Yeah, totally. Which is now literally like an epidemic with all these new apps that are coming out, the dating apps. It's just so easy to find someone else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, that's another project.
Brilliant. Oh, it's funny you said that, because I was actually going to ask you, my next question was, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Well, I probably just gave it.
Yeah, no, you did.
The advice to my 20-year-old self would be, whatever I say is going to be shorthand for a lot of other things, but be generous and open-hearted and kind, even when it's the last thing you feel like doing. And be authentic. That means be true to yourself and don't be concerned about what other people think you should be like or think you should do. Do what you feel you should be doing for yourself, true to yourself. And worry about giving, not worrying about how whether other people are going to like you or not.
Wow, that's golden advice. Really, really is. And it can apply, you can apply that to any situation, any age. And you never go wrong with that. Definitely. Definitely never.
Takes courage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it
Um,
does.
and it takes you being vulnerable, because it's a risky thing
Mm,
when you think about what I just
yeah.
said. But
Yeah.
but the rewards are just incredible.
Yeah.
But you've got to die and die again, and your world is going to fall apart. You know, oh my god, I can't do that. Like you're saying, like someone who's doing a podcast for the first time, who's
Yeah.
never done this sort of thing. You're on camera. Oh my god, what are we going to do? I mean, I was saying to someone the other day, I'm just like, I had a chance to coach Al Gore once. You know, the Vice President of the United States.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't be bothered. Honestly, I
As
had
you
the
do.
chance to, as you do. So, and anyway, the reason, and I thought I'd be really good at coaching him, because this was a time when he still was like his the way he communicated was so wooden, and he couldn't. He was so boring.
Really.
When I first went on camera, I was like a plank. I was like a piece of timber,
Yeah.
rigid, boring. And there was no color in my expression. There was no energy. It was just inauthentic. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, but I went for it.
I mean, yeah, that's the ultimate way of really seeing yourself, how other people see you, isn't it? And then you're like, oh, I didn't realize this is how I come across. So there's this huge
Yeah,
realization.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's true. It's definitely it forces you to look at yourself in a completely different way, but it's a very positive experience at the end of the day, because it definitely it expands your perspective, if anything, of yourself and of the world. Yeah. And last question: why would you say it's important for us, no matter what you do in life, where you work? Why do you think it's important to bridge that gap between the spiritual and the material worlds?
yeah. I'm pleased you came to this question. It's been a preoccupation of mine for many, many years. I had from a young age, I've always had a problem with what seems to be a split between one's religious or spiritual life and the real world. And it struck me early on that what we need is a seamless integration of spirituality in the broadest sense into our daily lives, our work, and our personal lives. And so that's the thing that I think is the biggest challenge for people, because actually a lot of spiritual practices and spiritual people can be escapist, and they're not actually, and they don't have any impact or much impact on the world in a positive way, because they're off in some etheric state. Where, you know, I mean, I know people who've meditated for years and every day, and they're still, but somehow they're disconnected from the practicalities of daily life.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really, really important. If we're going to have transformation of society, or the evolution of the consciousness of the human species, we're going to have to integrate spirituality into our lives fully.
Yeah.
And how that and understand how that translates into our actions and our behaviors.
Yeah.
So when you're not kind to someone, you can go to church every Sunday, but what happens when you're not kind to someone? What's that? Where's the church? Where's the kindness?
Yeah.
You know?
The gap in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. I think that's such a key component in making anything in life really work in a positive way. That's such a key component, because you're right. There has been such a split, and you can use spirituality as an escapist tool, which a lot of people do, and they don't. And you know, everyone's guilty of that to some extent, but it's definitely harder to bring that knowledge back that you gained through meditation or going on retreats for a year or a month. You know, it's
Yeah.
so hard to bring that information back into your reality and integrate it, but once you do, it's so transformative. And it's pretty much what you've been doing with your work, with your life. You know, there's such a power in being able to really anchor this information and this wisdom in the love, you know, in the connection, and trying to establish that new connection with people around you. It's really powerful, and it's really incredible that you've actually been doing that for most of your life. Really, really
Thank you.
commendable.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Yeah. Well, the only problem is I feel like I'm just getting going, and
We always do, isn't
I've
it?
got some grey hair, so
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah, you've totally been doing that, and from in different ways and from different levels. But yeah, with everything you've done, that's incredible, and especially with the corporate stuff, that's huge. Because I think that's one of the biggest problems for me, anyway, from what I've noticed, is the whole corporate world and how just egocentric and money driven a lot of the companies tend to be, and having that fresh perspective of being able to integrate that tiny bit of love and connection into the workplace just makes a huge difference. And then the effect that has on others. I mean, 1 in 5 people in the UK has depression, and now probably even 1 in 4. So that says a lot about how people are being treated in the workplace, in the environment that they live in. So yeah, it's so important. Yeah. So
True.
well done to you, Michael. It's
Thank you.
brilliant what you're doing. Yeah, really amazing. And you can tell you've got such a loving energy and open energy to you. So it's just so nice to talk to you altogether. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That's lovely to hear. I appreciate that. Well, you've been great too. You've been a radiant interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. You've taken the conversation. It's been a pleasure because you've allowed me to talk about things I love to talk about, or I haven't talked about for a while, or
Mm.
so thank you. Appreciate it.